They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And here we go.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. I hope it's wonderful for you, because it definitely ain't wonderful for me. This is the second time that I've recorded this video, because I literally just deleted it because I'm an idiot. But obviously I didn't need to tell you that. Well, not some of you anyway. Love you, trolls. Anyway, you're looking absolutely amazing. I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes. And who are we talking about? We're talking about Bill Thompson. Some of you will have already seen this. Some of you won't have. I had to pay to get it, despite it being sent to me by email. Thank you very much to that person who sent me it. But yeah, I did end up having to pay for it, because apparently New York Times, you have to subscribe to be able to read it. And I've had to do that. But look, I do it so you don't have to. For those of you who haven't seen this and you haven't read it, strap yourselves in. Because look, what I will say, I'm going to premise this by saying, when I say things, a lot of the time people reach out and they're like, oi, you don't know what you're talking about, you fat bastard. What are you even doing talking about crimes in the US when you're over there in the UK? Stick to what you know. Talk about stuff that happens in the UK. And what I'm going to say to them people is fuck off. And what I am going to say is, look, this ain't me saying what's in this document. This ain't me. This is coming from the horse's mouth. This is Bill Thompson, lead prosecutor in the Idaho 4 case. And again, strap yourselves in, because some of this is stuff that we've been saying for a long, long time, and you really need to pay attention. Really need to pay attention here. Investigators in Idaho murder case dispel baseless rumors and theories, right? In an interview, the lead prosecutor, Bill Thompson, decreed how some of wild speculation surrounding the case made life hell for innocent people. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some irony in that, because it could be argued that some wild speculation surrounding the case is making one particular person's life quite uncomfortable. But look, we don't want to say that, because we'll start upsetting people, won't we? Look, you can't question whether Bryan Kohberger's innocent or not, or whether he did this crime and had help. Just listen. He said he did it. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. I'm sure there's a song somewhere in there. But anyway, listen to this. Listen, strap yourselves in. In the years, investigators spent scouring through what might have motivated Bryan Kohberger to murder 4 University of Idaho students. They found no sign that he had connected with his victims on social media. So for everyone who still to this day is saying that Bryan Kohberger was messaging Kaylee or Maddie, or Kaylee and or Maddie, get your hand and slap yourself in the face, because you're wrong. It's not happening. The lead prosecutor, it's not me saying it, it's the lead prosecutor saying nothing. No evidence on social media of any contact whatsoever. There was no evidence he had visited their home. Nothing. There was nothing to suggest that he had ever met them. It is even possible that he did not select the house as his target until just before he entered it around 4 a.m. one night in November 2022. The lead prosecutor in the case has said in an interview on Thursday. Now, look, before we carry on, because this gets worse as it goes on, think back to the PCA, and what did the PCA tell you? What was the verbiage within the PCA, and what general picture was it trying to push? Let me know down below. One word, stalking. After Mr. Kohberger's sentenced to life in prison for the crimes on Wednesday and the end of a court-ordered prohibition on discussing the case, prosecutors and investigators have started dispelling the many rumours surrounding the case. And I must say that a lot of these rumours that we're going to talk about are rumours about Bryan Kohberger. It does touch on the surviving roommates, for instance, but a lot of these are guilters, what he's talking about here. This is guilters and the things that they have been saying. So again, this isn't so much attacking people who were questioning things. Again, they touch on it at the back end, but for the most part, this is people talking about Bryan Kohberger himself and the things. I find that very interesting, very telling, that he pinpoints and he goes through that side of the argument, not the giving the guy the benefit of the doubt, but crucifying him in media. And here we go, look. Theories and suspicions have long served as the basis for erroneous news coverage and endless social media debates. Bill Thompson, the lead prosecutor in Latah County, where the killings happened, said investigators had hunted extensively to establish a prior connection between Mr. Kohberger and the 4 students, something to suggest why they were targeted. But if there was a connection, it remains a mystery, he said. It is possible that Mr. Kohberger's attack was one of opportunity, he said, with the victims chosen at random. That's where we are now. Can't tell, so he must have just done it randomly. We simply don't know the answer to that, Mr. Thompson said, and human nature is, we would like to know the answer, an explanation for everything. We want to make sense, but what we're dealing with doesn't make sense in and of itself. Mr. Kohberger himself did not detail his motives during his brief statements in court. Prosecutors said Mr. Kohberger drove to the victim's home in the city of Moscow near the University of Idaho campus early on November 13th, 2022. Obviously, they can say this now because Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty. So by making statements like this, saying, it's not he might have done, they're saying he did. They said he sneaked inside and fatally stabbed 2 women in one bedroom before fatally stabbing another woman and her boyfriend on another floor. Investigators had compiled an array of evidence to tie Mr. Kohberger to the crimes, which he admitted to when he pleaded guilty to all 4 murders on July 2nd. A knife sheath left at the scene was found to have his DNA on a button snap. Again, but the DNA is questionable around this. It's not a slam dunk. And he does touch on this in a bit. Video surveillance showed a white car like his repeatedly. Remember, like his. Doesn't say showed his car. It says showed a white car like his, repeatedly driving near the victim's home around the time of the killings. Mr. Kohberger's cell phone appeared to have been turned off for several hours that night. Not it was turned off. Appeared to have been. So what that's saying is we couldn't find him. We couldn't find him on the towers where we looked. That's what they're saying there. But it doesn't say his phone was switched off. At the time Kohberger was arrested in December 22, about 7 weeks after the killings, investigators detailed cell phone data linking Mr. Kohberger to late-night visits he made to areas around where the killings occurred that suggested he had studied the scene of the murders before carrying them out. Hold on. But Mr. Thompson conceded on Thursday that those visits did not necessarily prove Mr. Kohberger had visited the home or surveilled it, as the area served by the cell tower infrastructure probably extended all the way to the main highway that brings people into town from Washington, where Kohberger lived. He said investigators were unable to find surveillance video that showed Mr. Kohberger's car around the house in the months before the killings, though in some cases video of the area may have already been deleted. But it's important to understand they found nothing. Nothing. So even though the PCA would want you to believe that he went here and tried to push a stalking narrative, what it absolutely did, they found nothing. Nothing whatsoever. In the end, Mr. Thompson said it was certainly possible Mr. Kohberger did not choose the location of his attack until moments before the crimes. Do you believe that? Let me know down below. In the months when prosecutors and investigators were prevented from discussing the case, an array of theories and rumors arose, and it now appears that many of them were false. One theory discussed in a recent book about the case was that Kohberger had visited a restaurant where 2 of the victims worked. Other news organizations reported that he had followed some of the victims on Instagram. Investigators now say there was no evidence of either. Do you understand that? So that's not me saying it. It's not me being a conspiracy theorist. This is the lead prosecutor saying no Mad Greek connection, no social media connection, nothing whatsoever. There is literally nothing. Nothing connecting him to these people. One wildly held theory was that Mr. Kohberger created the Facebook account under Papa Roger. It's not him. Not him. Others have speculated Mr. Kohberger, who at the time of the murders was a PhD student in criminal justice and criminology at nearby Washington State University, had developed an affinity for certain high-profile killers such as Elliot Rodgers. We spoke about this literally yesterday. The little dude who Bruschetti, I can't remember his name, that doctor, he thinks that he's has an affinity for Elliot Rodger or Ted Bundy. But Mr. Thompson said Mr. Kohberger learned about a variety of serial killers during his studies and did not know of anything to suggest that he had sought to emulate any of them. That certainly opened the door to say, well, maybe this is where he got the answer, Mr. Thompson said. I don't think we can definitively say that, because it's equally likely that this is just what people who are studying criminal justice are going to be reading. Mr. Thompson responded to other rumours. One documentary reported there was evidence Mr. Kohberger sat down on a chair in the victim's home at one point during the killings. Mr. Thompson said he was unaware of any evidence to suggest that. So just think about this documentary that so many people hung their laurels on. It was the thing that tipped the needle, tipped the scale, pushed them off the fence into the guilty camp. One of the pieces of information on there specifically lies, false. What else on there was not perhaps accurate? Others have reported that investigators were following Mr. Kohberger in the weeks after the killings when he drove to the beginning of winter break back to his family home in Pennsylvania with his father, Mr. Kohberger. It not been publicly identified as a suspect at this time, yet police officers in Indiana had stopped his car twice along the way for traffic violations. But Mr. Thompson said the authorities had no notion that Mr. Kohberger was a potential suspect until after he was already back in Pennsylvania. The traffic stops, he said, were totally coincidental. Mr. Kohberger was a bit of a shit driver by all accounts. Pair that with his autism, ASD, you can tell he probably does certain things because that's just what he does. Like not wearing a seatbelt, for instance. There has also been lingering speculation about the role Mr. Kohberger's family played, including whether they had suspected Mr. Kohberger could be the killer or whether they had even helped investigators. Some noted that Mr. Kohberger placed a phone call to his parents on the morning of the killings. Mr. Thompson said Mr. Kohberger had a history of daily phone calls with his family, so the call that day was not out of the ordinary. He said there was no evidence that the family had provided tips to law enforcement, but he said they had also not interfered. There was nothing to indicate that the family knew that he had done this, he said. The speculation surrounding the case at times dragged innocent people into the spotlight. And it's important to understand this as well, right? As Bryan Kohberger was incredibly close to his family, we're hair and hair. He literally called them every day. We've heard of a potential altercation in prison where he felt that someone had made a comment about his mum. It wasn't that, but he took it the wrong way, whatever. And this is what happened. So he's very, very close with his family. They seem to be a very, very close-knit, and he has been for years. Even when he was a youngster at school, he would go out of his way to still talk to his mum. Think back to Brian Laundrie, for instance. Brian Laundrie. Think back to him. Now, we know, or have to be careful what you say here, well, the Laundries kind of knew what was going on there. Do you think Bryan Kohberger had done this and not given his family the heads up, not said anything? But they're saying his family, there's nothing to indicate that any of his family knew anything. So again, all of the people who say that Bryan Kohberger's sister tipped him off, Bryan Kohberger's sister knew that he did it, this, that, and the other, or this phone call was an odd phone call because you can't tell the fucking time difference and things like that, but that's by the by. The speculations around the case at times dragged innocent people into the spotlight. Online true crime sleuths had trained their sights on the surviving roommates. Call 911. Won't happen. Friends and acquaintances of the victims, and in some cases even people with the slimmest of connections to the victims. Mr. Thompson said that harmful speculation put some innocent people through hell, and said it was poor commentary on that portion of our society right now. I can understand people's curiosity, Mr. Thompson said. I cannot countenance the way these young people were stalked and threatened and suffered. Their families as well as themselves is outrageous. I read that without even putting it on the screen for you, didn't I? But there you go. I'm a lunatic. There you go. Well, look, I'll put it up now so you can read through it. Look. So that's just what I was reading. So if you want to read it yourself, so you don't think it was me who was just saying it. That was actually Bill Thompson who was saying it. It was actually, I'm an idiot. I need sleep. But that is basically Bill Thompson telling off the guilters, really. Look, you said so many things and so many loads of it was shit. Not true. A fiction, non-fiction. Not true. Lies. You just made it up in your little brain. Let me know what you think. It's backpedaling. He is backpedaling. What did they have? And the question again, it's raising, why did Bryan Kohberger plead? Maybe people are just going to say, well, he obviously did it. He looked at it and thought, well, they don't have a case and I can't bother to go to court anyway. I'm just going to plead guilty. Because I can't be bothered. Makes no sense. Love you all.